All right, hello, welcome to another Sales Shiro. And today we are delighted, myself, John Golden from Sales Pop Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, and my colleague Martha Neumeister in Vienna, Austria. We're delighted to welcome Hannah Ajikawa to our Sales Shiro live broadcast, where we're going to talk about the post-purchase journey. So we love having lots of interactivity, so if you're in the chat or whatever, please ask your questions. Please share this with your colleagues and friends, and we're going to have a very interesting conversation. So we're going to get straight into it, because Hannah is the CEO and founder of Revenue Funnel. And we're going to talk about, as I said, we're going to talk about the post-purchase journey. So, Hannah, let's get straight into it. We
Yeah.
tend to be so excited when we land a customer, and we're all, hey, this is fantastic. And then we rush off hunting for new customers, and we kind of hand off the new customer to the implementation and all of that. And sometimes it feels like we have put kind of a full stop on something, and then at the end, and then we're moving on, rather than seeing this as just the first step in a long journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. You said two things that stand out to me. One is a handoff, and then two was a full stop. And I think when we shift our head and our mindset towards something which is a continuous journey, something that's seamless, something that is ongoing, it then starts to shift our behavior in the way in which we act and in how we interact with buyers and our customers. So it's definitely not a full stop, and it's definitely a process where we don't want a prospect who's finally like, okay, I've made this really big decision and I'm feeling a little bit nervous and I'm excited and I'm anxious, to be like, okay, now let's start again. I'm really I always advocate for making sure that it feels continuous, rather than it being like, okay, now we're moving into step two.
hmm And one of the things I think that customers often feel, and we all feel, is we get a bit nervous after we've just purchased something, and maybe we're a bit excited, and then we have that little bit of motivation dip where we're a little bit worried because we made the decision. Maybe we feel like we're on our own because the salesperson has passed us off to and we're just a little bit nervous. And I think that's a period of time when you really need to wrap your hands around the customer and make sure they feel that they're not alone, and you're not just kind of, now your customer, go off and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and it's an interesting one that you bring this up, because I see there's two. I talk about two lenses when it
Mhm.
comes to this experience, right? So for a someone who's just signed up as a customer, there's logical things that just have to be done, right? We need to have a handover. We need to get you onboarded. We need to make sure that you reach the value that we promised you. We need to make sure that you build and bake this thing, this solution, this service into your day to day. The other side of it is the emotional side, right? Which is, we need to keep you motivated. We need to keep you inspired. We need to manage your expectations. We need to be very transparent with you about some of those expectations, and how we can help you deliver on your outcomes. And I think we forget the emotional side sometimes, and we're very much like, we have our checklist, and I'm going to take you through this checklist, and I may not even address you. I'm just going to kind of look through my checklist and ask you questions, without thinking about what kind of emotional state may that customer be in, having made a big decision that's going to impact not just them. Oftentimes it's going to be a broader team.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, is that the broader team part is understanding that this touches lots of different parts of the organization. And I also think that internally in the organization is making people feel like it's not a customer isn't owned by sales or whatever, but a customer is owned by the whole organization, and we all have to come together to service them.
Yeah, I always say revenue is everyone's responsibility. And when you hear, I think it's, I might be misquoting this, but I think it might be Zappos in the States. One of the things that they're known for is, everybody, I think during their onboarding, you'd have like a barista and like a customer service rep, and everybody would understand, from the barista through to someone who's a shop manager, the role that you're playing in driving customer value. right? So the barista's keeping everybody, tip top, ready to rock and roll, and providing energy to the team. And I feel like we as organizations are not really good at helping people understand the role that they play, no matter how junior or senior they are, in revenue and in driving commercial value. So I think it's really important that we don't just see it as sales are like, I did my job, I got my revenue, I got my commission, go CS, go do that thing that you do where you set them up and break their heart because I made broken promises, right? So it's really important that we see that we play an active role in the success of our business, and we do that by driving value to our customers on a continual basis.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, and it's the value on a continued basis rather than seeing it as that idea. I think fulfillment, because fulfillment always sounds like we fulfilled everything. Well, yes, you have you have reached the baseline because you've given somebody exactly what they expect. And I guess the next part, Hannah, is how do you then surprise them, delight them, move them from just being a customer to being ultimately, I mean, you want them to be an advocate and a fan, but how do you get them at least the starting point to get them to be an advocate?
It starts internally by defining what a great client experience looks like. I think it's so funny, like we leave a lot of this down to the discretion of the rep or individual or team that is exposed to a customer at any given time. And it's like, no, really define that. And I think there's so much that we can learn and borrow from the B2C space in how they interact. When we think about things like hospitality, it's really making sure at the first point we really understand what is the experience we're trying to create. And then from there, we clearly define what some of those steps or pieces look like. And a big part of that is just delivering on the first promise. And we deliver on the first promise by clearly understanding what the hell they wanted in the first place. So that first promise is you signed up to work with us for X, and we're going to work as fast as we can to get you to X. Because think about it, there's just this hope that a customer has until they reach the point where they're like, I've seen the first sign of value, which is like, oh my God, thank God, like my team are using it. Oh my God, the data was right. The CRM works, all those pieces. They need to feel that as quickly as possible. So once we deliver on that initial promise, then it's they're excited. What more can you do for me?
Yeah.
What else can you do, right? I always think when you go to like if you go to a restaurant, right, and you have a bad main meal, you don't even want to look at desserts, forget it. And if you had a great starter, great main meal, you're like, okay, I can't wait to see the dessert. So we have to think about that as well. And if we're delivering on promises, our customers will come to us to look for more. They don't have a desire to work with tens or dozens of different vendors, because that's painful.
Yeah.
It's really painful. So if you can do more for them and derive more value, then you can start to build trust, and then we can start to go through that process of delighting and getting them to turn into our raving fans, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think those early quick wins are so essential, and in making the customer feel, as you said, feel excitement and relief that everything is working. Martha, you have a question?
Yes, I have one question. What tools or strategies can help automate the process of turning customers into advocates?
Oh. So what tools or automations or technology can you use to what's the role of tools, technology, and automation in the customer journey?
So let's assume that the customer's happy, because sometimes, right? So we don't want to be automating any of that. Even just now, I was just speaking to one of my future partners around like just NPS and how do we start to automate the advocating process when people are happy. So a whole part of helping to support that process is making sure that we can enable and teach them and guide a prospect so it's seamless. And an example I always use is think about how yourself, the last review that you left, the last time you promoted something that you used, it's often after being prompted. Someone asks you, hey, you just used this, or hey, you just came off the phone with our team. Hey, you just have reached this point in the solution. How are you finding it? Can you leave a review? And it's not really until that point that you do it. So firstly, we need to deliver on the promise. The next thing is make sure they're happy. The other thing is making sure that we guide them towards being advocates, because sometimes it's a bit like, I mean, I've got lots of stuff that I'm happy with. I'm not going to go out of my way and say, today is my advocacy day.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and talk about all these amazing tools that I use. So we need to support them with that. And sometimes it may mean incentivizing. And that could be with whatever tools you have at your disposal to help them with that process. But from a technology perspective, there's tons. Sometimes it's just a case of using a Zapier integration, right? You can just use Zapier to pinpoint them towards the next action you want to take. So there's so many referral tools now and kind of affiliate tools that you can use.
Yeah, and there's another question somebody just asked: how can sales teams measure the success of the post-purchase experience?
Yeah. Sorry, Martha, you did this?
No, I was saying there's a question just came in on the thing. How can sales teams measure the success of the post-purchase experience?
It always comes back down to what is it that the customer is trying to achieve. I think sometimes we measure the success of the post-purchase experience in how and us getting through those logical steps. I've done the 10 steps that I was supposed to do. I really hope the customer is doing okay. And it really needs to be, what are the 2 or 3 things that the customer really needed to see? And again, we have to balance there's a careful balance between asking the customer what they want to see and knowing and guiding them as the partner as to what they should expect. Because really early on, when we're going through that really critical sort of handover transition period where they're like, we've signed a contract, we really need to know at that stage, what is it that they're wanting to do and when do they need to see that? Because if we are then getting to the stage where we're like, all right, we spent a few months with this customer onboarding and getting them up to scratch, and we're like, we didn't really know what they were looking for, and they seem unhappy, even though you've got to a place where you're like, well, we've done everything that we can. It's so critical that those are constant reference points. Okay, we've got our second call. We're going to go through what we've done to date. You're logged in, you're doing this, you've achieved that. It's allowing you to save this much time. How much time did you think you were going to save? Maybe they say, I haven't saved as much time. And it's like, maybe it's not that that's a bad thing, but then we can guide them and say, at this stage, you would typically see that kind of time saving after X, Y, and Z. I think sometimes we just have to manage that emotional expectation so that you're not getting to a point where they are telling you, I am not happy, but we are telling them what they should be expecting and seeing at certain stages. And I'm not saying any of this is like really easy. Just because I'm talking about it doesn't mean that it's like this always happens. I'm sure I've got customers that are like, I mean, Hannah, you didn't really do that for me. So we're talking about like, it's best practice and what we want to do more often than not, than it being perfect all the time.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is, let's face it, when you purchase something and then you implement it and sometimes you end up using it differently. You end up, your needs evolve. Things change, and if you, from a vendor point of view, if you don't have your finger on the pulse of those changes, or maybe and so the communication is obviously critical to make sure, as you said, to make sure they're getting the value out of it. But needs change over time, so keeping in regular contact is obviously critical as well.
No, it is. I think there is never too much communication. It's something that I've learned a lot. You feel like you might be reaching out too much. You feel like you might be having too many touch points. But if there's logic behind the interaction, and you've really helped to map out the points at which you do need to have discussions to hold them accountable to changes. Because I think that's another thing. We take on as organizations the full burden of the customer success when they have to actually be held accountable to actions that they need to take. It's impossible for me to help you be successful if you don't show up to calls. So please, when we have a call and it's about this, I will even support you in getting your team wrangled together so that they actually turn up. I think sometimes we shy away from those conversations. So we don't even get to the point where we can turn them into advocates, because they just haven't done the stuff that they were supposed to do.
Right. And I think that's a really critical point there, because you have to have established a good relationship at the beginning, and you also have to have confidence in yourself, right? I think sometimes people approach it, but sometimes people approach it from a point of view of, they feel themselves a little below the person they're selling to, rather than coming to as a business equal. And as you said right there, what you outlined is, setting clear expectations. Here, we'll deliver this and we'll deliver on the promises and all of that, but here's what we require from you. And as you said, I think sometimes people don't have the confidence to sort of be that business equal.
Yeah. And it's, I think, when we talk about leadership in the teams, we really have to make sure that we are providing the tools and the resources to support our teams who are, spending most of their time with customers, because sometimes a rep will know that there's a better way to do something, but know that the company won't get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I always say it's like revenue is the customer is everyone's responsibility. So there's a part of that where you also want to give your team some discretion to act in the moment in like what can be best for the customer. And we can only do that by giving them the freedom and the tools and access to do stuff that doesn't have to wait for like 2 weeks of approval. And it's something so simple. So
yeah, and I think that's a really critical point there, is that empowering people to be able to delight customers. You see that, I can't remember, somebody was telling me recently that one of the airlines they fly, the cabin crew have a discretionary, like up to $20 or something, that they can give something to a passenger or whatever in the right circumstance. Like he really liked the wine that they were serving or something, and he was asking about and talking, and as he was getting off the plane, they just came over to him and they said, "Here, we'd like you to have a bottle to take with you," right? So he's obviously loves that airline. But that's only because they're empowered to do these things.
Precisely. And that's a big thing. I've seen that with other companies as well. I know that there's certain hotels that do that. They give their teams discretionary budgets. Anyone, even down to the people at the front desk. There's in the UK, we've got Prep Manager who also, if they feel like I was at the airport and I said, I think I left my wallet like with my parents somewhere at the other side of the airport. I was like, oh man, they're like, oh, don't worry. And it was a good like $15, $20 worth of stuff. They're like, it's fine. It's like, huh? Just for free? Is that okay? Like, you sure? So yeah, but look at that could have been a really awkward moment, or you've delighted me, so I'm always going to come back. So it's just those moments around delighting and that discretion and empowerment makes a big difference, really big difference.
Yeah, and those are the stories you're going to share, because let's face it, when we just get what we expect, we tend not to share that, because that's just what we got, what we paid for.
Yeah, exactly. It's the over and above thing where we're like, actually, now I'm gonna go out of my way. And there's ways to do that. I remember working with a CS team for about 1.5 years, and one of the key things we did as an exercise is I said, I want you to figure out how you can create £10,000 worth of value without creating any cost to the business. So £10,000 worth of value for the customer without, and they were like, what? But it was such a good exercise. And I said, just think, what could you do right now? Think about the questions you're constantly asked, just things that are not part of your general job description, but allow you to create value. And they came up with all of these ideas. One was, well, I'm actually going to create a PDF and I'm going to embed 10 videos in there about how to do this very specific use case in our platform, because I'm finding a lot of clients are asking about this and they get confused about the meaning of these data points. And it just went down so well. It just saved time, and it was over and above. They couldn't find it on the website. It was like, oh wow, you built this for me. Yes. So now when I ask you for that 5% incremental uplift at renewal, you're like, take it, take my money. Thank you so much for all the value you've added. So I think again, that freedom to think, that freedom, I call it extending the runway, where you can do stuff that don't cost much, but you see patterns in usage or behavior or the questions people ask for, and it gives you more room to either extend the runway financially so you can ask for more money, or time. So you give stuff away that doesn't cost you much as a business, but it gives you more time with a customer to figure out how we drive the value that we promised, because we haven't quite got there yet. So there's ways that we can get creative if we just take a minute, take the time to think through it.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Martha, do you have another question?
Yes, one question came up. How do we know when a customer is ready to recommend our brand to others?
We don't. That's why we asked the question. Like we just don't. Someone asked me the other day, "Hey Hannah, can you leave a review on the platform?" They've never asked me before, and I was like, "Yeah, just did it. I love it." But so I didn't know I was ready. I
Right.
have my to-do list here. It does not have review that platform that I use. I'm not thinking about you. Just ask me. And so we have to think about things like we know. What I'd say is take an internal view first.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have support tickets that are unanswered? Do they have, are they using the product? Are we seeing results based on whatever data we can capture? What's the sentiment of the relationship? That tells you internally that they will meet a certain criteria for being asked. Don't just ask every customer in a blanket email, can you leave a review? When they're like, we haven't responded to them in 6 months. How do they slip through the net? And that has happened, right? So you need to have an internal perspective that gives you a signal that you can now ask permission. And if you can take the example of all of these product-led growth companies where there isn't really any people you interact with, but they know that you've taken certain actions inside a platform, and it just pops up on the screen. Would you rate us out of 10? Would you recommend us? So, and if so, here's a G2 thing or a Capterra or whatever platform you use to review. So I just think it's the internal view that allows us to grant permission externally to do that.
Yeah, and just building on that, because somebody asked a question. Building on that is, if you have customers, they seem satisfied, they seem happy, they seem everything seems to be going well, but they're not engaging with you, they're not advocating for you. They're just they're just happy, they're just moving along.
Yeah.
How do you engage with a customer like that?
So I would always ask, what does a customer care about more than your product?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is themselves.
Yep.
The second thing is their own world, right?
Yep.
So how do you provide value in their world outside of, as an example, pipeline of CRM?
Yeah.
So in this case, how do you, in the time that you maybe engage with them, check whatever notes you can, check LinkedIn, whatever, find out what's important to them and go give them a platform and go blow that up, right? So nothing feels better than getting a notification that someone's commented on your LinkedIn post. Thank you. Doesn't matter even if you're on LinkedIn a lot, you're like, that was nice, right? Nothing feels better than being asked about your expertise to come onto a panel or a webinar or a stage. So give your customer the stage. It's not going to be, sometimes that's hypothetical. The stage may be their problems, things that they need solving outside of what you do. And sometimes it's literal. Give them a stage to talk, to spread the word about whatever they're doing. And you know what? Occasionally they may mention what you do for them. But I think you have to provide avenues that sit outside your immediate needs in the hope that at some point they kind of pay that forward to you as well.
Yeah, and just coming back to something that you mentioned earlier is, there's a lot of products and organizations today where you can be a customer of theirs and there's never any interaction at all. Everything is automated, completely hands off, but today I feel that, and I think it started before COVID and that, but there was a real return to people wanting to have some human connection, right? And it obviously it's been accentuated with COVID and where after. And if you have no connection, if you have no human connection whatsoever, then it becomes very easy, I think, just to swap out for something else because you have no particular connection to that brand. Yeah.
Unless they keep innovating. I've got, if I think about the technology that I use for some of the things that I do, I don't even know who the owner is, to be fair. It's just every single time I log in, it says there's a new update. Please relog in. Every single time I log in. So, and it keeps improving. So if it keeps delivering value. And it's interesting you mentioned that because today I was like, man, how much am I paying for that? Because I haven't used it in maybe 3 weeks.
Right.
And I thought it's only a month contract, right? Month to month, I can just cancel it. But then I was like, actually, that just inspired me. I need to use it today. And I did. So it's like, sometimes we just got so much tech. Oh my gosh, we have so much tech. There was a time when if I think back to when my first sales job, I was using Siebel CRM and Outlook. That was my tech stack. Yeah. Right. That was it. So it's like, now we've got our business tech, we've got our personal tech. We subscribe to tech ourselves, particularly now that there's so many AI tools. So think about why you stay loyal to some of these tools. And it's often just a pace of innovation. So how do you innovate in your service delivery? How do you do so much, even if you don't even have like that synchronous communication through asynchronous ways? How do you just keep innovating and doing stuff where they're like, damn, I didn't even ask for this, but thank you for giving me the heads up about the renewal, because you realize that my financial year end is actually this month, even though our renewal is not due till July. You're making sure that I got the budget ready. Like, I actually appreciate that.
Yep.
So you didn't ask for a call. You just said, by the way, I checked the system. I know that your financial year end is coming up. Just we're way out, but just make sure that you're covering this. That may prompt oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you a question about the platform, and now you've got a conversation. So you drove value, they're happy, and it's triggered a bit like today, right? For me in that system, logging in and being like, oh, damn, I forgot how good this was. So, but that comes from driving value. It always comes back down to that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing that you mentioned there. I just wanted to highlight is that, innovation, right? And it's not just innovation with the product, right? It's or the service. It's innovation with everything, with how you interact, with how you engage, with and I guess if you foster that level of innovation, but across your whole organization, then great things can happen. But sometimes we tend to think, oh, innovate with the product or the service, but no, innovate with everything you do.
Yeah, I always talk about it. Revenue Funnels built around helping companies unlock incremental value in everything they do, rather than just like, oh, the product or sales conversation. It's just everything you think about. And if you think about how nice it feels, when you go on a website and it's like, welcome back, Hannah. There's like a chat bot or something like that. And it's like, welcome back, Hannah. And you're like, cool. And then it says something like, we have a webinar coming up. It says, just click attend and we'll sign you up. And now the invitation's in your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to enter my email address. You tracked me. This is, thank you. So it's just like that kind of ease. I didn't request it. I didn't ask for it, but they know that. How do we remove friction? How do we innovate in how we're supporting customers to engage with us? So it's like, it's just those really small things that make a big difference, and think, oh yeah, the next webinar that comes up, well, I remember how easy it was. I'll sign up. If I attend or not, it depends, but I'm signed up.
Yeah, because it's a funny thing psychologically, that we're all consumers ourselves, we're all customers ourselves, and we all want frictionless experiences. But then when we're on the other side of the equation, then we forget a little bit about the customers, and we start to try and organize things to suit ourselves instead of keeping ourselves in the shoes of the customer.
Yeah, it's so true. We separate. I always say that something happens when we get into work mode, where we forget that we're actually just humans. We're just people interacting with people, and people are beautifully flawed, is what I always say. Like, we're perfectly imperfect. So there is that moment, right? If it's just down to simple things. That first call in the morning, it may not be the best because that person struggled to get their kid out the door to get to school on time, and now their whole day's late. It's like just having that human insight to be like, that intuition, let me just give it a second. So I just think we have to get back to that. That's like my fundamental belief.
Absolutely. But it's been fantastic. Oh, sorry.
I know we are running out of time, but I received a very interesting question. How do you handle a customer who seems unhappy even after making a purchase?
Even after making a purchase?
Yeah.
Attack it head on. So really quickly, I had a situation where, I've done a lot of fractional work. So you can imagine I come in as a VP of sales or a CRO, and I've got a Monday morning meeting. That's it. Just start on the day, and you got to know everything. And at that time, one of our biggest enterprise clients for that customer had a call, and it was, we are pissed off and we're going to move. Basically, that was the call. So the first thing we asked was like, so they made a purchase, and it was from the purchase they were annoyed. They knew they were going to, so they were putting in their non-renewal at 11 months early. Honestly. And it was just simple. What did you sign up for? And what is it that you haven't got that you thought you were going to get? And it was like, you have explicitly lied. You said you can do these 5 things. You can't. And it's not just a functionality thing. It's a compliance thing. We have to be able to do this in order to remain compliant. Okay. Let me go find out what that means. And let me just understand how we can actually address that. And I can tell you really honestly, if we can do that or not. Like, we have this, is there a special way of just ask, because that's the only way you're going to hear it explicitly from a customer's mouth. So you feel like you're upset, feel that, get that from their behavior, their body language, their interaction, and lean into it and just ask, like, what is it that, where is the miscommunication happened between what it is that you thought you were signing up to from what's being delivered? And it may just be something really simple, or it could be a case of, we actually have to give you your money back.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think meeting things head on is always the best thing to do. And just, Hannah, one of the final things we do on these live streams is we just ask you for a power tip. Like, how do you set yourself up for success every day?
Oh, wow. So I actually, not being wishy-washy or ooey-wooey, but I actually now start off with just some deep breathing. I like to come out of bed and just do like a couple of minutes of just deep breathing at the edge of my bed to get my thoughts clear. And then I set a goal of what is, I start from revenue. So I start from revenue and then I kind of go down from there. But everything starts with me. So I told you before I jumped on, I'm aching for my workout. So breathing, deal with me, get me right. Once I'm right, everything else sort of falls into place. But it's always revenue first, and then we go down from there.
Yeah, perfect. Well, listen, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all these fantastic insights with our audience. Again, this series is called Sales Sheroes. It's all about women in sales doing fantastic things. And obviously, Hannah, with Revenue Funnel. Just quickly before we go, tell people a little bit about Revenue Funnel.
Yeah, sure. So go-to-market consulting firm. I started it last year on International Women's Day, actually. So taking a previous 6 years of experience doing consulting from companies that are like from 5-man bands up to, 4,000-man bands, and just taking all of those learnings to build a consulting firm that is centered around helping companies to get close to the buyer journey and identify some of the hidden blockers in their growth. So I do that day to day and absolutely love it. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, I'd encourage you to go check out Revenue Funnel. Again, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Martha in Vienna. Thank you, the audience. Fantastic questions and great engagement. Thank you all. And we'll see you for another Sales Shero session very soon. Thank you. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.